Miami, Florida, July 15, 1983. Michael Corleone Blanco was only 12 years old when he saw his mother for the last time that day. Griselda Blanco, the queen of cocaine, the Black Widow, the woman who built a drug empire that moved $80 million a month, was sitting in the living room of her mansion in Coral Gables, smoking a cigarette and looking out the window as if expecting something inevitable. Michael remembers every detail of that afternoon because it was the last normal conversation he had with his mother before she disappeared forever. Not physically, but in all the ways that mattered. Griselda turned to him and said in a tired voice he had never heard before, "Mijo, if something happens to me, you need to know the truth. Not the truth the newspapers will tell, not the truth the police will invent, but the real truth about who killed me and why." Michael, still a child, didn't fully understand the weight of those words at the moment. He just nodded and kept watching television while his mother went back to looking out the window, smoking in silence, waiting. 3 days later, on July 18, 1983, Griselda Blanco was arrested by the FBI in her own home during a massive operation involving 32 federal agents, helicopters, and SWAT teams. Newspaper headlines celebrated the capture of America's most dangerous woman, the queen of drug trafficking who had ordered more than 200 murders, the inventor of motorcycle hitmen, the criminal mind that turned Miami into a war zone during the cocaine years. Michael watched his mother being handcuffed and dragged out of the house, while reporters shouted questions and television cameras captured every second. Griselda didn't resist, didn't scream, didn't cry. She just looked at Michael one last time and nodded, as if saying, "Remember what I told you." But Griselda Blanco didn't die in 1983. She was arrested, tried, and sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. She survived the American prison system, was deported to Colombia in 2004, and lived quietly in Medellín until September 2012, when she was assassinated at age 69 by 2 men on a motorcycle, killed in the same way she had killed dozens of her own victims decades earlier. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. But that's not the story Michael Corleone Blanco tells when he talks about what really happened to his mother in 1983. Because for Michael, his mother died that July day when she was arrested, not physically, but in all the ways that mattered. Because the woman who left prison 20 years later was no longer Griselda Blanco. She was just an empty shell of who she had been. For 40 years, Michael kept a secret his mother told him in that last conversation in July 1983. A secret that explains not only what happened to Griselda, but reveals the hidden truth about the Medellín Cartel, about Pablo Escobar, about the war on drugs, and about who really controlled cocaine trafficking in the United States during the 1980s. And in 2023, after decades of silence, Michael finally decided to tell everything. Not for revenge, not for money, but because he says the world deserves to know the truth about who betrayed his mother and why. The story begins in 1978. 5 years before Griselda's arrest. At that time, she was already one of the most powerful drug traffickers in the United States, controlling cocaine routes connecting Medellín to Miami, New York, and Los Angeles. Her organization moved tons of cocaine per month, generating astronomical profits. But Griselda had a problem few knew about. She was being pressured by the Medellín Cartel to submit to Pablo Escobar's and the Ochoa brothers' control. Griselda was independent. She ran her own network, had her own contacts in Colombia and the United States, and refused to pay tribute to the men from Medellín who wanted to control all Colombian trafficking. Pablo Escobar respected Griselda, perhaps even admired her, but he couldn't allow a woman to operate a drug empire outside the cartel's control. That would set a dangerous precedent, encouraging other independent traffickers to challenge his authority. So Escobar made Griselda a proposal in a secret meeting in Medellín in December 1978. The proposal was simple: join the cartel, pay 30% of all her profits as tribute, and in exchange receive protection, access to better routes, and the guarantee that no one would try to kill her or take her territory. Griselda refused. Not out of pride, but because she had done the math and knew that paying 30% would destroy her profit margins, making it impossible to compete with other traffickers willing to accept Escobar's terms. Griselda's refusal enraged Escobar, but he couldn't just kill her. Griselda had powerful connections, the respect of many hitmen and traffickers, and killing her would cause a war Escobar didn't want at the time. So he decided on another strategy: destroy Griselda from the inside out, turning her into such a big problem for American authorities that she would be arrested or killed without the Medellín Cartel having to get its hands dirty. and the way to do that was through informants. Michael Corleone Blanco discovered all this years later, piecing together fragments of conversations, documents, testimonies, and confessions. And the truth he uncovered was shocking. Two of Griselda's closest men, people she trusted completely, were informants paid by the Medellín Cartel to feed information about her operations directly to Pablo Escobar and simultaneously to the FBI. The goal was twofold: allow Escobar to know exactly what Griselda was planning to sabotage her operations, and provide the FBI with enough information to eventually arrest her, removing her from the game without the Medellín Cartel taking responsibility. The two informants were Alberto Bravo, Griselda's third husband, whom she herself killed in 1975 during a shootout in a parking lot in Bogotá, but who before dying had already established the contacts and connections that would be used against her. And Jorge Rivi Ayala, her main hitman, the man who carried out dozens of assassinations on Griselda's behalf, the man she considered loyal as a dog. Ayala had been secretly working for Escobar since 1980, reporting every move of Griselda's, every cocaine shipment, every planned murder, directly to Medellín. Michael's revelation is explosive because Ayala eventually became an FBI informant in 1983, right at the time of Griselda's arrest, providing detailed testimony about her criminal operations that ensured her conviction. The official narrative has always been that Ayala betrayed Griselda for a reduced sentence to save his own skin. But Michael claims the truth is more sinister. Ayala had already been working as an informant for the Medellín Cartel years earlier, and his decision to cooperate with the FBI in 1983 was orchestrated by Pablo Escobar as the final blow against Griselda, ensuring she would be permanently removed from the cocaine business. Michael says his mother discovered Ayala's betrayal a few days before her arrest in July 1983. A contact in Colombia, someone inside Escobar's circle who sympathized with Griselda, sent a message warning that Ayala was reporting to Medellín and that the FBI was planning a massive operation to arrest her. Griselda confronted Ayala by phone, accusing him of treason. Ayala denied everything, swore loyalty, said he would never betray her. But Griselda knew the truth. She always knew when someone was lying. It was an instinct that had kept her alive for decades in the world's most dangerous business. But it was too late to do anything. Griselda was surrounded. The FBI had detailed information about her operations thanks to Ayala. The Medellín Cartel had effectively destroyed her network from the inside, sabotaging shipments, alerting authorities, eliminating allies, and she had nowhere to run. Fleeing to Colombia would mean certain death because Escobar controlled the country. Fleeing anywhere else would be temporary because the FBI was determined to capture her. So Griselda made a decision that surprised everyone. She stayed. She waited in her mansion in Coral Gables, smoking cigarettes and looking out the window, waiting for the inevitable. And that's why she called Michael that July afternoon, 3 days before being arrested. She wanted him to know the truth, that she wasn't captured because the FBI was brilliant or because she made mistakes. She was betrayed by people she trusted, destroyed by Pablo Escobar because she refused to submit to the cartel, sacrificed in a power game among traffickers who saw women as inferior, as temporary operators who only existed with men's permission. Griselda wanted Michael to know that she fought, that she never bowed, that she died, in every sense that mattered, because she chose freedom over submission. Michael Corleone Blanco spent 40 years processing this information. He saw his mother arrested, saw the newspapers turn her into a monster, saw Pablo Escobar celebrated as the king of trafficking while his mother rotted in an American federal prison. And he saw Jorge Rivi Ayala receive a reduced sentence in exchange for his cooperation, living comfortably in a medium-security prison while testifying against dozens of other criminals. In 2012, when Griselda was assassinated in Medellín, Michael finally understood that the cycle of betrayal had never ended. His mother was killed on orders from old enemies in the Medellín Cartel, people who never forgave her refusal to submit decades earlier. And now, in 2023, Michael decided to expose everything. He says he has documents, recordings of conversations, testimonies from people who were there, proof that Jorge Rivi Ayala was a double agent working for Escobar years before becoming an FBI informant. He claims the war on drugs in the 1980s was a farce, that the FBI was working with informants controlled by the cartel itself, that traffickers like his mother were sacrificed while the real power, Pablo Escobar, continued operating freely until he was killed in 1993. Michael's revelation is controversial. Many question his motivations, his facts, his credibility, but he insists he's telling the truth, not to rehabilitate his mother's image as someone innocent, because she wasn't innocent, but to expose how the game really worked, who really controlled the trafficking, and how independent traffickers were systematically destroyed by cartels operating with the tacit knowledge of authorities. They killed my mother in 1983, Michael says. Not physically that year, but in all the ways that mattered. They arrested her, destroyed her empire, ensured she would never again pose a threat. And they did it all using men she trusted, men who betrayed her for money and protection. Pablo Escobar orchestrated everything, and the FBI was complicit, whether knowingly or not. My mother was sacrificed on an altar of political convenience and cartel greed, and I spent 40 years keeping this secret. But no more. The world deserves to know who really killed Griselda Blanco and why.